Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Divorce Unplugged podcast. I'm Nicole Cox, the family law liaison, and my co-host,
Keegan Burke. You may recognize me as Divorceology on all the socials. I'll start with my set of disclosures, Nicole. I am not a lawyer. I'm not practicing lawyering. I'm not giving legal advice. And I'm certainly not trying to give you legal advice today and any day. For us is a conversation to be had around all of these topics that we try to cover for you, the listeners, so that you can be informed and go on your journey effectively.
Exactly. So again, I am an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. And so we aren't giving legal advice, and it's real talk, all about divorce and everything you need to know.
And today we are going to get into a topic that I focus on pretty heavily. And I know it's one that is sensitive to everybody who's going through divorce. And I will label it divorce economics.
Okay.
And so the first and foremost thing we have to remember across the board is whether you're doing it alone, whether you're doing it with an attorney, divorce is generally an expensive proposition. It's not going to be something that's just one and done, unless it's the absolute perfect scenario. But
Huh.
how many of those have you seen?
I've never seen one.
So let's get into kind of just some general framework and context for all the topics that we're going to talk about today from an economic standpoint. And lots of questions that we get are, well, what is this going to cost me? Just the pure cost of divorce.
Well,
And so if you were to think about this in brackets, right? Uncontested, that perfect scenario, it's still
oh
going to
yeah.
cost you between $3,000 and $5,000, sometimes $10,000 just to work
Oh, for
through
sure.
some of the complexities, right?
Mhm.
A contested divorce, which I know you and I both have been through.
Yeah.
I think on the absolute lowest end, $15,000, easily over $100,000,
Easily.
high
Easily.
conflict, right? Anything
Oh,
that's going to be contested, child custody, lots of assets, you're well into six figures all day long. And so I think it's really one of those things that ensuring you understand that going in
yeah.
is really important, right?
Mhm.
Some of the questions we get too: what drives up those costs? Well, number one is attorney's fees, right?
Those
Everybody,
standard.
generally, their first steps go get an attorney.
Mhm.
Attorneys on average are $500 an hour. I don't think people realize how fast an attorney's bill racks up
Oh boy,
during
so
a divorce.
quickly. So quickly. And one thing we haven't even talked about is the retainer just to get in with the attorney.
Yes, and so here, this is a great
Yeah.
little tip and or thing that I think about when I don't know, customers, clients, people that we help, um, are considering an attorney. I'm skeptical of the attorney who says, "Oh, 3,000 or 5,000 for a retainer." And if I know that the case is not a $5,000 conversation and they're offering a very low entry point, to me that's just to get the customer hooked.
Right.
You're going to run through that retainer
So
almost
fast.
overnight. Next thing you know, they're asking you for more money. And
Right.
now you've got no record, no trace, no track of how you're going to navigate the legal expenses for your own representation in your case because they got you with that small retainer.
That's
So
true. I think that's an interesting point. Maybe a larger retainer is more reasonable because you don't run through it as quickly, and hopefully you have an attorney that wants to try to make it last and to stretch it out.
yeah, and also it's one of those things where it's like if I've got an attorney or I'm considering an attorney, I want to be picking them because they're considerate of what does my case look like and what will it require from a level of effort. And if they're
Mhm.
just saying 5,000, let's get going. Yeah, okay, great. I want an attorney and I need to get into that game. But I also want somebody who's going to be realistic about setting expectations for me as the client, right? So
Mhm.
it's one of those very tough things. Also, why I say you should have a coach, because a coach is
Yes.
going to help you prioritize those
Mhm.
topics, those things that you're going to try to push, things that you're going to have the attorney focus on. So
Yeah.
those are the things that really jump out at me as an immediate upfront cost of divorce.
Well, absolutely.
Other things that come up from a cost perspective. Motions cost money, right? So
Oh,
filing
motions cost
fees.
So much money because
Attorney's
you have to
fees for
respond to
hearings?
them.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Like literally, it's so expensive when somebody just keeps filing motion after motion on you. The motion game, I call it, because then you have to respond, and your attorney has to respond, and so it just, I mean, the attorney's fees just it just keeps racking up. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you end up getting past the motion game and you get into the court game and you've got hearings,
Oh
there
my
isn't
God.
an attorney that doesn't book you for 4 hours, whether
Right.
you're in court for 10 minutes or not, right? And
Mhm.
4 hours at $500, there goes 2 grand.
Well, then let's think about also the preparation that they do beforehand that you get charged for. I mean, literally every one of my hearings was like 8 grand.
It's a and this is, I think, the number one thing people don't recognize or consider when getting into the divorce process, what
Mhm.
the pure expensive legal fees is going to turn into to fight, right?
Right.
Um, and so we'll talk about mediation and those other options later, but it's one of those things that ensuring you know what you know and you know how you're going to go about it is really important.
Right.
Things that people don't think about as cost, at least initially, right, are opportunity costs, lost time for work, right? How many hearings, if you had a 9 to 5 job, did you have to leave or take off to go be in a courtroom?
Or I have one. How many times did you have to pay a babysitter to come when and watch your child if you were in a court hearing?
Exactly. And now
Mhm.
costs isn't always dollar cost, but emotional stress, right? That's an expense on your psyche. It's an expense
Right.
on your peace of mind. That's a really expensive part of this. It's stressful.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, parenting, right? The it disrupts parenting for whoever happens to have the kids during that time, right? Because generally there's going to be a custody parenting plan in place, and so you're going to have to navigate that. You touched on it with babysitters.
Mhm.
And then financial planning to me is an expense because you get stuck in this paralysis state. So if you
Mhm.
haven't done some of these things going into the process, they get frozen, right? So you
Oh,
have
that's
to know what you have before you get there. You have to have, like you said, an accounting of, what do we make as a family? What do I make as an individual?
right.
What do we owe as a family? What do I
Right.
owe as an individual? These are all things that I think are really important to get because once you guys separate, and if it is contentious, the odds of getting it out of the other person are very low or very difficult, also
Right.
very expensive.
Well, and you made a really good point, and I want to make this to women is that you need to have an idea of what's going on with the family finances. You need to know, what you have, what's going on. A lot of people, sometimes women just want to sit back and let the husband handle it, and I think that it's important to be educated on what is going on in your life financially.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it sort of touches on what we had talked about in a prior episode around financial control. And I think
Oh yeah.
in a lot of cases it's not necessarily an intentional control, but I think, legitimate family conversations around where do you stand economically?
Right.
If the man is the primary provider, ensuring that,
Mhm.
you guys are at least on the same page, you have some awareness. And by the way, as a man, if you are the primary provider, paying attention to certain signs. Listen, I know a lot of women who are in the ninth year, eighth, ninth year, and they're going, I'm out the second I hit that magic number 10, and I'm
Oh,
riding the
yeah.
gravy train for a long period of time because it turns into an extended
Most
spousal support
states.
scenario.
In most states, they take that
Yes.
into
Yeah.
consideration.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So I think it's one of those things where we just have to make sure that as long as everybody is open, clear, transparent, they understand where they're at, it's easy. But if it's
Right.
not going to be easy, making sure you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's. Divorce doesn't happen instantaneously, right? So if you're a woman or a man, there
No.
are things that you're thinking about. Start acting on those things. Start preparing. Secure another one, secure your logins, right? I have experience
Didn't
of folks
think about
going
that.
into my accounts
I did
after the
too.
fact, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So those are
And I think
really
it's illegal, but yeah, secure your logins for sure.
exactly. So from a pure frozen state standpoint, right? Let's talk about what it means when divorce starts, because I get a lot of folks who they file for divorce and now you've got a joint account with X number of dollars sitting in it, and one party or the other or both start going after the money.
Can't do that.
Can't do it.
No,
It's
I've told so many people, "Please do not drain that account," and then on the flip side, if the partner did drain the account, well, that's an issue that we need to take into court.
100%. Those, and this is general, right?
Right.
Those temporary restraining orders on your finances go into place, and that includes insurances, that includes beneficiaries on retirement accounts. However,
Mhm.
if you think long term, also something that once the divorce is over, make sure you change, right?
Yes, change the beneficiaries. We talked about that estate planning, then go back to your estate planner and change beneficiaries, executors, whatever you have to.
Yeah, exactly. But do not get into your finances once the divorce is going and start making massive changes.
Don't buy things, don't yeah, no.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. If anything, right? And this is also an interesting thing because I see it often. People will start trying to shift money around before the divorce. And some of that's okay to an extent, so long as it's ethical, it's clear, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
transparent. But don't just do it for the sole sake of thinking that you're going to hide something from the court or from your opposing spouse, because they'll find it and
I have
because it will cost you.
right. I have an interesting one where, I mean, they had separate accounts. It's one of my clients. She moved a large amount of money from, checking into savings, but it was her sole account.
Mhm.
So, was she just wanting to put it into savings, but it just was bad timing? He argued that she was trying to hide it, but it was very obvious to the courts that it was there.
Right, right. And again, it's okay if it's there and you disclose that you're not hiding it,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, yeah, exactly.
You just bring up a perfect point. Community property
Oh,
versus separate property, right?
mhm.
And all, states are different, right? Lots of
Yeah, there's
some states
equitable
are
distribution states as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So lots of folks don't recognize or understand what separate property is versus community property.
Mhm.
And I think this is something that, again, coaching is an important piece to it. Obviously, a lawyer is going to be able to define that for you, but there's a self accountability to understand this without necessarily having your attorney explain this to you for $500,
Well,
right?
exactly, that's where you can save some money if you can understand it yourself.
Exactly. And so let's give folks a general definition free of charge, right? Separate separate property is anything that you acquired before marriage, anything that is an inheritance or a gift, and anything that is post separation. Now, here's the thing. This happens all the time. Somebody walks into a marriage with a certain amount of separate property, they
Right.
build a life together, and now you start having some of those separate assets spill into your
To
community.
improve a piece of property that was separate with
Mhm.
community. Mhm.
Yes, and then it goes the other way, right? The community
Yeah.
builds something and it starts going out into separate assets. And now, by the way, that is
This is called
something that,
commingling.
yes, exactly
Yeah,
right.
commingling.
Commingling. But
Yeah.
it is something that plays a major role in the divorce process because those are complexities that add complexity to the case. There's a lot more to argue about. And so
Oh,
just
yeah.
making sure that as you get into this divorce mentality, you're in a place where you can recognize what you have as a community, right? What you've built during your life together and what you had separately.
And that's hard, and you sometimes have to trace assets. I think this just begs the question for me, and it brings something up that, you know, is it best to have some type of a prenuptial agreement before?
I love that question because in my mind, I think every single
I
marriage should have a prenup.
I agree 100% with you. Yes.
And let's just kind of divert into that conversation for a second. I think that it makes sense for both parties because there are expectations, there are protections. It removes concern, it removes nefarious behavior,
Mhm.
and it removes the incentives to separate,
Right.
right? Because in separation, you're left with the opportunity to let somebody else decide. If you have a prenup, your decisions are made and it's made between the two of you, versus
Right.
adding the state or a mediator or anybody else who can use these random laws and statutes to impose something that maybe you didn't want had you
Right.
guys just agreed in a prenup going into it.
Mhm. I agree.
So,
I think they're
um,
very, very important.
yeah, no, and even to the extent that in some cases, if you're in early into your relationship, consider a postnup. Consider getting one done.
Or a
Um,
cohabitation agreement.
yeah, yeah,
Those are
absolutely.
yeah.
I love that point. I don't think enough of us do it.
Mhm.
I think it costs everybody more money, and I think that's something else that sort of parlays into the next topic, and that is the community property is the community property. So when you get into a divorce, generally one side or the other or both have expenses, attorney's fees. Let's use that as the example.
Mhm.
And generally, the the higher earning party is going to have some level of responsibility to pay the fees for the other side. But
Okay.
remember, if you're fighting and you're paying attorneys for either side,
It's still
subject to
coming out of the
reimbursement
same.
or reallocation, all you're doing is you're draining from that community pot. So what
Mhm.
you want to split later is going to be less. What you
Mhm.
want to leave to your kids or give to your kids or help your kids with is going to be less. So
On.
just because you, man or
Mhm.
woman, have the other party paying for fees doesn't mean you're not paying for it. It's coming out of the community.
Oh, absolutely. It's draining the things that your children could enjoy, you know?
100%, and you see it all the time, and I think that goes to the point of there are absolutely things that you have to understand. When it comes to divorce, it's not just pure equality, right? It's not going to be fair for either side. And so, if you can get into that mentality, have a coach work through kind of what to
So
expect, it makes it a lot easier. You'll probably save in a lot of places that you don't have to argue some of these tedious things. By the way, here's just a pure net benefit conversation. If it's a $10,000 argument, right, a $10,000 asset that you're gonna argue over, figure out how to split it, even if you take
because
less of a split, because 'cause you're gonna spend 10 grand
I
fighting
was
over it.
gonna say it's not worth fighting over it. Not at all.
Exactly, and by the way, no offense to attorneys, they're not gonna tell you to stop fighting over it because they're not incentivized to do that. They're
Mm.
incentivized to represent your interests. Your interest is a portion of whatever that is. You're gonna pay them over here, and
Yeah,
you're gonna split whatever it is left.
and there'll be
So
nothing left then.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's talk child support. I
Okay.
know we've kind of touched on it before.
Yes, we have.
Um, here's the issue that I've got with child support. Um, One, I think that all of the calculations are flawed, right? Every state, everywhere. I think the reason for it or the method in which they justify it is flawed. Um, and I think that it's a very big consideration from an economic standpoint for the paying party. Now, in my mind, I absolutely agree. Kids need, the necessities, they need to survive, they need to have all of these things. And so either parent, right?
Right.
There's a responsibility to raise and pay for your kids in a joint household, but certainly in a separated household. Um, but going into it, you have to be prepared that somebody is probably paying child support. And if it's you, understand what that looks like.
Right. And then how to budget around it.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly right. Now, I tell folks all the time because most of the folks that I help are the ones paying child support. Um,
And I know I'm the ones that are getting the recipient. Well,
so,
actually, I mean, I have one female that's not, like,
yeah,
so it's not always that way.
no, exactly. And
Yeah,
thankfully, the ones that are paying, the females that are paying, are the ones that are vocalizing against the way child support is structured.
right,
But that being said, here's a thing that I think most people don't consider. What is it ultimately that drives child support? First is timeshare. Second is income. Those are the general provisions around
Timeshare
what.
and income. And so
Yeah.
then when we talk about income, it's like I think that's where I'm coming from. When there's such a huge delta between what one parent and the other parent makes, and the other parent, I mean, we consider it, sometimes it's called an upward deviation, when there's so much money being made on one side and then the other one was unemployed taking care of children. That's when I think that it's necessary.
Yeah. So, okay. I want to cover that. But before I get there, when we talk about timeshare and income, right? And when we talk about where we apply priorities in our divorce case, if I
Mhm.
have $10,000 to give to an attorney to fight for something, I'm not going to spend that $10,000 fighting over what my child support number is going to be. I'm going to spend that $10,000 fighting over the other issues, like maybe custody is at issue, right?
Right.
Because the custody is going to have a trickle down effect on my child support.
Well, yes, it
Um,
does, and everybody knows that. That's a technique or a strategy that a lot of people use to get more
uh,
child support, which is
oh, don't I
something
know that?
with with my female client. I mean, her ex stayed underemployed, unemployed for so long and fought 50-50, and she's out there paying spousal and child support.
Yeah, yeah. And so now I want to come back to what you just brought up around necessity and the exceptionally disparate income streams or lifestyles between the parties once they separate. And I
Right.
think that's where spousal support should play a bigger role than child support. And I say that because in my mind, it's twofold. One, if you're together, that's the lifestyle the kids had. If you're going to separate, then the kids are going to have different lifestyles between the homes. No, income doesn't necessarily drive the quality of life one way or the other. However, if the necessity is that let's say the lesser earning party needs to go get, professional
Yep.
designation or get on
Mhm.
their feet. That's a spousal support element that should be applied to the marriage and not to child support. And if
Okay.
it stays the same, let's say the lesser earning party, like you just said, right, stays underemployed intentionally,
Right.
then give the kids to the working party so that the other party can go get a job.
Well, that's kind of what our argument is right now, and that is what, I've been coaching my client on. There is another option that you didn't think about, which is what if the parties were not married? So then what do you think about child support?
Well,
If we're not
then
married, what do you think about child support?
well, I think baseline child support is a necessity based distribution. And I also am a big believer that we should not have discretionary use of funds. It should be specific use for specific necessity, where the baby mama or the baby daddy doesn't just take the income and use it for anything and everything. And listen, I hear all the arguments, right? Well, I have rent, I have this, I have that, and so if I'm paying for that, then I have less for the kid. At the end of the day, you chose to have a child out of wedlock. That's your choice. Let's be adults. Let's go into it and
Well,
understand that.
no, and it's not to interrupt you, but you said that you agree with spousal support, but not child support. And so
Mhm.
my question is, so if there's not a legal marriage, but they lived like they were married and they had a child, then that person should still be, in my opinion, subject to getting child support.
Yeah, if there's a child, child support should be in effect, but in effect on a needs based or necessity based model, not an algorithmic or Disomaster or any of the other calculators that they use based on you know uh, pure discretionary spending by the other parent. It's they need X, Y, and Z. That's definitive. It's not because the guy makes or the girl makes a couple $100,000, they're going to get two, three, four, five, $7,000 a month just because they earn more. That's not, those are pre-child, um,
So I'm just gonna tell you, I totally disagree, but that's okay. Like
good.
Like, I 100% disagree with you, and I can give you, like, 10 different scenarios as to why I do disagree,
Give me
but
one.
I mean, I think that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, give me
You
one.
know, I mean, you've got somebody that was not legally married, chose on purpose to have a child, did medical services to have that child together.
Mhm,
So now they're both responsible. Now, all of a sudden, mom, I'm just going to use this
mhm.
example, is taking care of family, homes, several, working for companies that might possibly help the other partner. And then suddenly, something goes wrong. Now, mom's not legally married, but father makes upwards of $5 to $10 million a year. Okay.
Mhm.
So now mom is thrown out because she doesn't have her name on the house. That didn't happen. And she's got nowhere to go with a small child.
Those are unique situations, and
Yeah,
again,
that's what I'm saying, like, in an upward deviation scenario where somebody makes that much money, I think they should be responsible for helping out,
well, and I
especially
think
if they don't have or want to go through any sort of parenting time. So mom's got 100%.
well, yeah, but but child support is applicable there, right?
Right.
And I think that's totally expected. But if it's a lifestyle conversation, not a child support conversation, then that's where I disagree, right? Child
Okay,
support's
I see
child
what you're
support,
saying. Yeah.
right? And so I think, and this is the issue with the system that I hate about it,
Well, I
right?
know, and I'm gonna bring something up because lifestyle is brought into the child support argument in court.
Yes, and that's what I hate about it, right?
Okay.
And to your point, right? I can appreciate that there are scenarios like that out there. And those are tough. And I think I would say to that person, if it were to come up later, right? Getting into that situation, there are steps that you need to be taking, conversations you need to be having
Oh,
up
yeah.
front.
Oh,
Otherwise, you're left exactly where we are right now, right? Somebody kind of
exactly.
out on the street trying to raise a child 100% of the
Get
time
a
and not getting the
get
support
a
that they need.
cohabitation agreement, get some things in writing, and put some things in your name.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, if I'm a man in that situation, I'm not that's that's not a scenario that I'm looking to get into because it's just a messy, ugly situation,
Right. Oh,
right? So let's do this. What I want to make sure I want to touch on before we wrap this up,
well,
what we want to make,
professionals.
huh?
Professionals. How expensive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So other things that people don't recognize or consider to be expenses are evaluators, so 730 evaluations or psychological evaluations or custody evaluations, whatever they're
So
defined
expensive.
as in the state. Those are very expensive, and generally they don't do the justice that they are designed to do. So being considerate of that is an important thing. Other people, and it's very common these days, guardian ad litem, minors counsel. It's
Oh,
almost
gosh.
a guaranteed thing if you've got a custody battle going on.
And you
Those
have
are,
to pay those people.
yeah, somebody's paying. And,
So
and
if you're
so,
appointed, and then you have to pay them, so that's another extra attorney you have to pay, and then once you get them into your case, I have seen so many of my clients not be able to get them out.
yes, they're attached and they're going to argue to stay attached because that's an income stream for them. Right. And
Right.
I honestly haven't seen very many do what's needed, in the interest of the child yet,
I
right?
haven't really either. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. And so a couple things I want to touch on too, that you want to make sure you don't do. No large purchases or transfers, no
Right.
hiding or lying about assets.
No.
Don't quit your job just to quit it. Don't stay employed. Just operate in a above board fashion, open, honest, clear,
Right.
and recognize that you're going to lose things you don't want to lose in divorce, right?
True. Mhm.
Anything, because I think we should probably wrap. anything you want to leave our folks with on this topic? And I think we could probably go for another 2 or 3 episodes on
I know, right?
economics.
I mean, obviously the takeaway is it's very expensive. You don't think about the extra expenses that come along with it. And regardless, it's a healing process because you are going to lose. You are going to lose a bunch of things and you're going to have to figure out how to rebuild.
Yep. Yep. And I'll close out with my final thoughts being this is one of the number one areas you should have a coach. You should be looking at your short-term, midterm, long-term planning. You should be prioritizing your case around economics. And you just need to understand that, you're going to lose a few battles if you want to win the war.
Yes,
And at the end of the day, war is going to leave everybody with casualties. So try to find places to find middle ground, avoid unnecessary expense and fighting over topics that can be negotiated.
right. Negotiate if possible.
Yeah. So
No,
like, subscribe, tune in, do all the things. We
absolutely.
love everybody listening. We love the continued questions we get. We are going to be covering questions in another episode again. But until then,
See you
we'll see
guys
you soon.
soon.